Hello, everyone. November 10th, 2021. I have such a variety of viewership, I never really know which area I should talk about. So I'm going to make some playlists. So there are some new things coming. I'm trying to learn how to get the videos off my new camera so I can go mobile. But I thought I'd add this to the Bob Jones story playlist. When I got out of college, my dad stopped drinking, started going to all the churches. And nobody really ever talked about his past before he got saved. So in some of my notes, and remember, I was there. I actually heard this. I heard this many times in my life. So I'm going to read an excerpt. When my dad was being interviewed out at the Grandview Fellowship. And let's see where it starts. They've been talking quite a bit about some things. I'm going to do this out of the order that they talked about it. My dad, Bob Jones, said, "I ran liquor into Oklahoma when it was dry. I had people that followed me. I was violent-natured. A man pulled a gun on me behind a screen door once. I went through the screen door. He shot at me right in my face. The gun didn't go off. I took the gun away from him and nearly killed him. A friend of mine picked up the gun, pointed it toward the ceiling, pulled the trigger, and it went off." Bob continues that I was drunk with a bunch of Marines. I was in the Marine Corps in California, which had been San Diego, and they would run off to San Monica Palisades. It says here, everybody got hurt except me. All it did with me was tear the seat of my pants out. Means they probably got drunk and started a fight. Since I know my dad. I began to see that there was a purpose there that I was running from, and that there was a hand that was keeping me from getting killed. But still I searched for peace and sin. He searched for peace through the ways of sinning. I never found it. I decided I'd come back after the Marine Corps and I'd do everything I could to get rich. That's what he did. He went to North Korea. He was one of the Chosin Reservoir survivors. And he almost did get rich. He says, as he continues, Bob Jones nearly made it a couple of times too. If I hadn't had that calling on me, I would have made it. Just about every time that thing was going good and I could make the big killing, a hand would come down and it would burn up overnight. I'd be left broke. So me and Viola, we've known feast and famine all our lives, like having too much one year and nothing for a couple years. One time I could have bought 12 acres in the center of Raytown in a shopping center. I was with, I guess he's thinking here. In other words, my dad, Bob Jones, had enough cash, except $5,000 to buy it. Bob was just ready to borrow the $5,000 and something just cut it off. I look back now and the way I was going because I wanted to make enough money to where I'd never have to do anything but buy me a big bar and retire. Well, he did buy him a small bar underneath the Blue Ridge Boulevard bridge on 24 Highway. It's called the Little Duchess. He had a great clientele. They were all of his friends, and when he'd lock up at night, they'd come in and rob him. Reminds me of the night he came home. Somebody was robbing him and they got in a knife fight. He was a tough old boy. Now, that 12 acres in the center of Raytown, Missouri, there is a shopping center there right now. And that shopping center is on the northeast corner of 63rd Street and Raytown Road. Him and Uncle Roy were going to build that strip mall. But what I've learned since I heard that story, and now that I am retired, I did not buy a bar though. A beer joint, what he always called it. I don't know why they added a big bar. That ain't the way he talks. But anyway, see, when you buy something, and of course Raytown still to this day is an incorporated city, not corporated. They tried to incorporate it 4 or 5 years ago when I was at the Raytown Farmers Market. I still have the probably the only surviving copy of how to incorporate a city. But you know, you gotta know the council people. You gotta be able to say hi where you go and pay your taxes and make your donations. You have to be seen at the Christmas parade, and you have to be seen at the Thanksgiving parade, and you have to be seen at the high school football games. And well, that just wasn't my dad. So, in conclusion, Mike says, a big what? The audience laughs. My dad says, a bar. And I look back now and I praise God that his hand kept me from that sin, and that calling lifted me up, because in my late 30s, my nerves went to where I couldn't even drink anymore, couldn't even get into sin anymore. Sin would give me a little drunkenness, would give me an hour or so of quietness within myself. But I got to where my nerves wouldn't let me rest. I'll tell you something. The darned, substituted word, can't rest, and you can live without sleep. No, you can't. You cannot live without sleep. And I'll tell you, from what I've studied, I had a traumatic experience where I fell and hit my head and got my sleep cycle off, and I couldn't fall asleep. And after about 5 days, according to an article I read, you can actually die from not sleeping. So something the brain needs is produced about sleep. And in conclusion on this particular story, because then we get into the story of the Kansas City Prophets and the book that was written, of which I probably have the only copy that's still around. Let's see. Say that again, Mike says. What did you say about the rest? I don't know if everybody heard that. The danged can't rest, and you can live without sleep. The dang can't rest, and you cannot live without sleep. I lived days on end without any sleep. It was hell in my mind, but my mind was clear, and so my dad said that he went to the psychiatrist to try to get healed because he had bad problems. So, since he couldn't drink anymore, they gave him a pill, actually, I remember. It'd make you sick if you drank alcohol. So they put him on some real opioids to help him sleep. Well, it didn't, he said. All it wanted to make me do was sleep, and they had to take me off of that. and the Lord was leading me to go to Topeka, Kansas, to the Veterans Hospital. So my dad went to Topeka, he signed in, and then he immediately run off and got into problems again. So they took him back, and he decided, I just got to sit this out. So he walked the halls day and night. He was in his late 30s. That means it was almost, he was in his late 30s. Well, this happened, I know for a fact, I was in high school when this happened. My great aunt Laura was living with me. So, if I would have been 17 and he was 21, 17 and 21, that's 38 years. So I guess that would be the late 30s. And so Mike says, after years of alcoholism and street fighting and all the gambling, etc., his life is miserable, perpetual unrest. My dad calls it hell. And so it was hell. And of all the things, the doctor out there was a Christian. And the first thing he looked at me, and he wasn't kind, he says, I'm taking your dope away. I can't live without it, Bob said. Oh, yes, you can. If you're going to live, you're going to live without it. So he took it away from Bob, and Bob walked the halls day and night. He walked them for about 5 days, and all the other doctors out there said, you might as well put him on the strong stuff. He found a home here. He'll be here the rest of his life. And you know what that Christian doctor said? No, he isn't. He's worth saving. I'm going to save that man. And I was about at noon one day, and I was walking in along the hall, Bob says, and my hands were shaking, and Bob was walking back and forth. He come up and he said, the doctor said, tough, huh? And I said, oh, it's really so tough. Well, I can imagine my dad saying that. I've seen him hurt before. If I tell you to do something and I show you how to stop that shaking, would you do it without question and continue to do it? Yes, sir, Bob said. Do anything to stop this shaking. Okay, come with me. We went down to that closet, and he flipped it open, and he brought out a mop. Mop the floors, Bob. Oh, I've never done that kind of work in my life. Mop the floors, the doctor said to Bob. You do what I told you to. Try it. So Bob mopped the floors, and mopped the floors until he quit shaking. So how long did you mop? Every time I started shaking. And then we talk about him getting out, coming back home. I was a senior in high school, and Viola was having problems. That's one of my stories. Senior in high school. Now you know I go off to college. I'm out of the scene for 5 years. So for occasional summer visits, some summers I didn't leave the campus, and I just stayed on campus for 2 years one time. And so I got back 75. We had finished building a house, I think in 74. So I lived there in the basement. It was a pretty nice basement for a few months. Got a job, got to move upstairs, had my own bedroom, sunny window facing the southeast. Learned about lawn care, saved up enough money. My folks lived about a mile away, so why not hang out with them? I remember one of the last things my dad said to me, we were talking about old times, and he said he couldn't believe how much I had changed in 5 years. Well, that's today's story, and I'm sticking to it.